you for joining us on today's episode of Project Further. I'm April Ulmer. Project Further serves as a resource for the families of girls in youth soccer who have a desire to play soccer at the very highest of levels. I'm joined in the studio today by my producer, Lo Ballard.
Hey.
Hey, Lo. All right, so what are we talking about today, Lo?
Wow, listen, we've been having such an incredible season. I just want to stay there for 2 seconds.
Okay.
We can do that. Our audience doesn't mind that. But we've had like some really good insight. And today we're going to take it a little further as we do, right?
All right.
And we're going to talk about like what a normal week is like for you guys. We talked about what it's like for you to be a soccer mom, but let's incorporate the whole group. Can we
Okay.
do that?
Absolutely. That's a lot.
So let's start with like tell us a little bit about your week. What is a week like for you guys?
Okay. I mean, that's a great question. So, just like we talked about in prior episodes, of course, my daughter now plays for Girls Academy, which, that team, that club is located 2 hours from where we live in South Mississippi. Okay. So the first thing is when you're a part of a club and an organization like that, I mean, it's beneficial because it's very well organized, right? I mean, they give you the schedule early on, so you know what days of the week you're going to be practicing. It's consistent. The times are consistent. So that element of it is nice because you can really kind of plan your week. And, if you have a family and other kids, you can kind of work early on to sort of plan around that. So we know early on in the season, this is what our schedule looks like. So presently, London, our youngest, the 13-year-old who plays for Girls Academy, she practices 3 days a week. Okay. So that essentially involves my husband, because he's retired and he's the one who kind of gets our kids from point A to point B a lot of the time, thankfully. But he takes her to practice 3 days a week, 2 hours each way. So practices usually start around 6:30 or so. So, she has she goes to regular school, just like every other child, getting them out of bed in the morning, packing their breakfast, making sure she has a good breakfast, but also making sure she has decent snacks because it's important to fuel her over the course of the day because she has training in the evening, right?
Yeah.
So making sure I have all that prepped and done the night before or as far in advance as I can. So after school, she comes home, she actually gets changed at home so she can actually grab, anything extra that she might need, if she needs a book, if she has homework, and then she has to grab some supplies from the house to work on that in the car, then she does that right after school. So she changes into her kit, she gets all that done. Of course, there's a lot of planning with that. We have everything done, ready for her to grab and go, because oftentimes I'm not even home yet by the time she leaves. She gets home, gets her stuff. They get in the car, they head towards Baton Rouge. Typically, depending on how she feels, if she feels like she could use an extra snack, they'll stop on the way, they'll get something. She gets there at usually around 6 o'clock, practice is starting at 6:30, okay?
Okay.
They practice for roughly 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours before coming back. What I've started to do is do meal prep as best I can. We've used some creative solutions like a hot plate for the car that can be plugged into the lighter.
Oh, wow.
So that way after practice, of course, there's some times when she wants to go and get something, and my husband, of course, will indulge her. Hey, let's stop here, let's stop there, get a good meal, something with some good protein, some good carbohydrates right away. But then, whenever I can, I try to prep that at home so that way I have some control over what she's eating for dinner. I know it's something that she likes. They don't have to stop because obviously it takes time, and we're trying to get her back home so she can get to bed because she's only 13. So, like I said, I found almost like a portable hot plate for her for the car, where you can put the meal in there. It can start heating up while she's in practice through the car. So then when she gets into the car, she can just start eating. So that's sort of, in sum and substance, what the routine looks like over the course of the week, 3 days a week, 2 hours there, 2 hours back, training for an hour and a half, a couple of hours, as soon as she gets home,
Yeah.
And this is something that's really been impressive about my 13-year-old, because one of the things that we talked about previously is making sure that the child leads,
Yeah.
right? The fact that she never complains about it. She never complains about the time of the car. She gets home. We don't have to say, okay, go on and, do your homework or, get your shower, get in bed. She knows exactly what she needs to do. There's some homework in the car. But when she gets home, she gets her shower, she gets right into bed, she gets ready for the next day. The next day, she doesn't complain having to wake up early because it's part of her routine. And this is obviously being driven by her. This is what she wants to do, right? So that's what the practice week looks like, okay? Kind of the day to day. And then, of course, there's sort of life going on outside of that, too. Sometimes there are projects that need her attention for school. And there are times when she has to miss a practice because of that, because, obviously we prioritize education. And so there are those times when she can't make it all the way to Baton Rouge. Fortunately, though, with my club and with a lot of clubs like this, they have alternatives for kids who come from far away, because lots of these types of teams, these clubs, they are really pulling from a large area.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's the option for her to practice in New Orleans, which is only an hour away.
Okay.
But she can at least still get some practice. We call that hub practice there. When she has like a big project for school or something else is going on, but she still wants to get some practice in.
Now let's stay right there for a second, because you mentioned something that really intrigues me. You said that London takes a very ownership of her routine and knows, almost in a sense, that this is the cost of me being able to do these things that I'm really passionate about.
Right.
Was that something y'all had to establish and she adjusted to? Or was it something that naturally she just kind of understood the value of the opportunity that you guys were sacrificing to give?
Right. It is something that she understood from the beginning, but because before we took this on, right? Because we've talked a lot about, previously, the sort of realization that if she was going to do what she was saying she wanted to do, then it was going to take more. And then we had to figure out what that looked like. And then we had a frank discussion with her about it. Once we, talked to the people like Coach Q and all that, we were like, this is what it looks like. And so we sat her down and we said, okay, these are the things that it's going to entail. And we are always very open with our kids with these conversations. We say, listen, me and your dad, our job is to help you get in the room.
Yeah.
Right? So if it's within our power to create this for you, this opportunity, we will do whatever we have to do. We will sacrifice whatever we have to. But once you're in the room, you have to show out. You have to be ready, right? And so we had this discussion from the beginning. We said, okay, this is what it means. This is what it's going to take if you really want to be the best player you can be.
Yeah.
First thing we said is you have to leave your club. You have to leave your club. Because if we're going to do this, then we're going to be all in.
Yeah.
Because with some organizations like GA, for example, with our team, there's a sort of full-time and then there's part-time. With full-time players, you're expected to be at the practices. You're expected to make the games. You're expected to travel. You are the core roster. You're a core rostered player. And then there are part-time players. Some players are only offered part-time positions. Some players might have been offered a full-time position, but they say, we're just not willing to sort of commit to that. We want to be part-time, meaning that you kind of show up when you can. They may say, hey, we want you to come to at least one practice if you can make it, et cetera. So, right? And so when she was offered a full-time position with this club, we said, listen, if we're going to be in it, we're going to be in it. Yeah. Because the whole point is to get you to the next level. We can't do that by dipping our toe into it. So if we're going to commit to it, we're going to commit to it. So the first thing is you're going to have to leave this team that you've played with since you were 6.
Yeah.
All your friends, all our friends, this is what it looks like. Number one, are you willing to do that? Do you want to do that? And she said yes. She was willing to make that initial sacrifice, which means a lot coming from a young child because, she loves her friends and they're still great friends.
Yeah.
But it means stepping into the unknown and stepping into something different. So we had that discussion. The other thing we said is, okay, you're going to have to go to practice 2 hours each way, 3 days a week. That means you are going to have to be on top of your homework because if work doesn't get done, if school starts slipping, then it's over.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. Is that something you can do? Yes. Okay. When we're in it, there are going to be times when you are tired, when you're, all these things. But the moment you start complaining about it, I don't want to do this, I don't want, then we're done.
Yeah.
Okay. So we made that clear from the beginning. And our kids know, and everybody's approach to parenting obviously is different. Everyone's sort of approach to their child can be different, even within the same family, right? Based on the temperament of the child. You know, the way that I relay things to my oldest child may be different from the way that I relay things to my youngest child. So within your relationship with that child, putting the information out there in a way that they can really understand, like, this is what it looks like. That's the first thing. I need to know that you're committed, okay? And she said, yeah, this is what I want to do. I said, okay, then let's do it. And so those things were established in the beginning, because I think that, you know, the way that our family sort of feels is it's hard to play catch up after you're in it. If you're going into it without fully understanding what this commitment means. It was the same thing as far as the dialogue between my husband and I. We were really like, this is what it looks like. Are we sure? And obviously this was behind closed doors. It's like, are we sure we can do this? Because if we're going to do it, this is what we're trying to achieve. And we have to be in it. If an opportunity presents itself, we have to be ready to pick up and go, because that's what we're trying to create. That's why we're doing all this. So not just for now with this particular club and trying to help in her development. As she develops, if she becomes what we feel like she can become and other opportunities come our way, we may have to pivot. We have to be ready for that. What is this going to look like? It may mean that our life as a family looks different than we thought it would a year ago. Okay.
So let me interject right there, because I think people don't understand, and I don't want to say I don't want to blanket this statement, but there's so much consistency of commonality when it comes to communication with the path and journey that y'all are on. I'm talking, I think we mentioned this too with the conversation with Coach Q, with you and other programs, and knowing what you need to know, but then being able to articulate it. Now we're talking about, let's go a little further into the home dynamics, right? Even within that, because last episode we talked about how everybody's responsible for communicating what you have going on in the calendar, that system that y'all have.
The hearth, right?
Yeah, so there's all these things that are versions of communication. For people who may struggle with communicating, what do you think could be a great way to start introducing that practice into their family dynamics? Because I don't want us to move so fast through this that we miss that this is a really major component in the scope of success in the future. So what are some things that you learned help build that ecosystem of communicating within your family dynamics?
I think the biggest thing is, you know, we have a little bit of a top-down approach.
Okay.
Whoever your partner is, whoever is the person who is going to be responsible for helping you make this happen, whether that is a significant other, whether that is, you know, a parent who helps you care for your kids, whoever that person is, starting there, okay? And saying, this is what we're looking at. Let's sit here and let's just talk about what this could look like for our family. Let's just sort of brainstorm. What are the things that we feel like could be obstacles? Do we feel like this is feasible? If not, why? If so, okay, well, let's talk about the things that are going to be hurdles for our family.
Yeah.
And then you have to sit and you kind of have to be intentional about hashing that out, right? Because that is really one of the things that's going to determine whether you move forward or not. Like I said, you know, in general, our family has a philosophy. We have lots of philosophies. We're talking about. I was like,
we might need to put those in some books.
Right. You know, Omerisms, right? Omerisms, right? You know, one of them, like I said, is, you know, one of the major ones. And one of the things I always say, you know, I always talk about being intentional, but always anything worth doing is worth doing well, right?
Yeah.
We live by that. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it well. We're going to do it to the nth degree, to the best of our abilities. And everybody's abilities are different. You know, not to say that there's only one way to do it, but that's what we're going to do, okay? And so the first thing is, okay, right off the bat, because we know the personality of our family, right, our belief system, as you will, then going into it, it was never a question of whether or not we would do part-time or full-time. It was never a question of whether or not we would kind of dabble a little bit in GA and then we would kind of hang back to with our local club. That's not where we're going. So starting out with the goal and being able to iterate that, to speak that to whoever is going to be the party or parties who are responsible for making this dream come true, talking about it, hashing it out, and then saying, okay, now we need to bring this to the rest of the family.
Yeah.
And sitting down and having a discussion. When we talked about this, like I said, we talked to London about it. We talked to her about her role, but we had a family meeting about it as well. We brought our 16-year-old into it. And we said, listen, this is what we're looking at doing. This is what it's going to look like. We're not forgetting about you. We're going to make sure that you have everything that you need. You are just as important in this. We're going to need you to help us make sure that your sister stays on top of things and you encourage her and you help her to make adjustments because she looks up to you, right? So it really had to be a family effort. And so, like I said, starting at the top, and then having that frank discussion, just a frank discussion with however you communicate with your child. And like I said, that just depends on the parent and your relationship and that child's temperament. But having a frank discussion, I think, is important because, number one, it makes sure that all the information is out there. We're giving you the information.
Yeah.
You tell us what you want us to do with that information. And also, I think it relays a level of respect to that child, right? In our family, our approach is, obviously, we're the parents, but we feel like our children deserve a measure of respect too, because they're people and they have thoughts and they have ideas and they have questions, right?
Right.
And so giving them a chance to have some say-so in what their future looks like, but also setting those boundaries as their parents to say, listen, okay, we hear you and we are there with you. That's our job. We're committed to this as long as you are. But this is what it looks like. And if you can't hold up your end of the bargain, then we're not going to hold up ours. We can't want, one thing we tell her all the time is, we can't want anything more for you than you want for yourself, right? And so that pretty much summarizes it. And so I think that just being intentional about saying the words, about hashing out the things that need to be addressed, and also I think remaining flexible and understanding that we're dealing with a family and kids, and there are going to be tough days and there are going to be easier days, and there are going to be days when they want to switch the plan. There are going to be days when they say, hey, I'm just, you do your best and you plan, and you're like, hey, all the meals are prepped and then she's like, I'm not eating that today. So,
Yeah.
But I just think, like I said, being intentional about saying the words and doing it in a particular order, right?
I love that. And I think anybody listening, I want you to make sure you pause this, go back, listen to that tip again, because what you'll gain from this season is that there are opportunities that come, challenges that come, things that may be unexpected. But if you can have this system of communication, you and your family will be able to face whatever comes, good or bad, and get through it. And that's one thing that we really like about being able to do the pod or the show this way, is that we're going to remain authentic. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work every day.
Right. Right.
and I'm sure you could talk about that. There are times where communication will break down. Mm-hmm. And that's a good point too.
Right.
How do you rebound from that when communication fails?
Yeah. I think that the most important thing is keeping the goal in mind, right? I think going into it, you have to understand where you're trying to go, where you're trying to get your child to, and understanding that everyone's path will be different, and sometimes your path, you'll have to take, detours and U-turns and all those things. And one of the hiccups along the road can be communication, right? And so when it does break down, whether that is, I thought she was supposed to be here, but she's supposed to be there this week, okay? Then figuring out how to make it work and say, okay, well, unfortunately, we missed practice because we thought that it was Tuesday and it's actually, it's Wednesday. So we missed it, right?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do in furtherance of the goal? Are we just going to say, oh, well, okay. No, that's not what we're doing. So we're still going to make this day count because that's where we're going. Okay, so then my husband, okay, well, what can we do? I'm real big on, okay, well, let me see who I can maybe hook her up with today. We're going to do some private training. We're going to do some online training. We're going to do something today, right? And so I think you have to remain flexible. My husband has this saying about being as flexible as water, right? Which for me as a physician has been difficult in my past before I got a husband and kids. And now I'm like, it's, Willy Wonka sometimes. It's crazy. But, being able to pivot when you need to, but you pivot towards the goal, right? When my daughter's like, yeah, the plan is to do this, and this week with training. She comes home and she says, oh, I forgot to tell you, I got this big project that's due on Tuesday. Okay, well, we're going to get that done.
Yeah.
Let's reshuffle the deck. Let's reorganize the priorities. Okay, we're going to get that done. But now what are we going to do to make up for this lost time of training in furtherance of the soccer goal, right? And don't get me wrong, my kids have other goals. I don't want to give the perception that our whole life now is soccer. Like, we do all kinds of other things. We do family vacations, and we do spend time with loved ones, and we go to the movies, and we travel for no apparent reason, and sometimes we just sit around the porch, and so it's a very normal family existence. I think that sometimes because soccer, the soccer part of it is real showy, like we're going here and we're going there and we're da-da-da.
Yeah.
And, it seems like it's all encompassing, and it's really, it's a lot, but I wouldn't trade it, number one. And number two, it doesn't overshadow the fact that we're just a regular family, and we do regular family stuff. We go to Disney, and we, go fishing, and we do those things too. It's just a matter of fitting the things that have to happen along the way into that schedule. And that's why I said being intentional about planning with the person who's responsible to help for you to help you make it happen is I think key to all of it. Right.
Now, listen, we're getting close to wrapping this episode up. Such great information, but I can't let you just slide by. Your example sounded like you really have forgotten about a couple practices, Doc.
I mean, there have been some times where we're like, and there have been some times where we're like, ooh, you know what?
Yeah.
We're just tired. We're not going to make it. Now, we're going to let you do something else, but oh my goodness, and you have to embrace that part of the journey, right?
Grace.
It's going to happen. You got to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
You got to do that. And I think that, I think recognizing that those things are going to happen and realizing that they didn't break the whole system, that's important, But I also think it's important to not just forecast out like when you're planning the week, right? I think, for me anyway, forecasting out the year, I think that's a part that we also need to kind of make sure we touch on, right? Like when you're playing at a higher level, things are going to happen along the way that kind of try to thwart like this week, like it didn't quite go, or like that, she had a fever this week, obviously, things happen, life happens, right? But also understanding going into it, like I said, talking immediately about what this looks like, making sure you as the person responsible for making this happen knows what this looks like. Because for us, it was okay, we got to figure out how to get her to practice. Okay, now we have the schedule for all the games. The games for our conference are all out of state, pretty much. I mean, we have a couple that might be in Louisiana, a couple 3 hours, 4 hours away, but a lot of them are in Texas. We've gone to St. Louis. So making sure that you know what that looks like. When you're playing at this elevated level, there's not really an off season for soccer. That's a big difference between what we're doing now versus when we were doing rec and select, right? If you're playing select, in our area anyway, you might do a little something during the summer, but not much. You don't really have to focus on that. You'll be fine, right? With this, you have to continue to develop. So there's not really an off season. Our technical season, our conference and GA, it ended about a month ago. But, London is out of town right now training. She's training, she's trained in Texas. She's trained in Florida because we're looking for opportunities to further elevate her game in the off season. So when she comes back, she's grown over that time because other kids, other girls, the ones who are also trying to go further in the sport in other sort of in bigger markets are training year round, right? They're training year round. So understanding that that's a difference as well when you decide to move from something like Select to a higher level, FDL, MPL, GA, ECNL, you have to be ready for that as well. But once again, it goes down to it comes down to just preparing, that preparation.
So I like that. And maybe this will be our tip of the day of the show, right? Where are some ways or places that families can go to find out like where camps may be or training opportunities may be so that they can forecast? And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but what are some of the things that you check to see where y'all need to be throughout the year?
Right. So, obviously, the internet's a huge resource, okay? But there's a ton of information out there. There's a lot of camps. There's some camps that are just, they have a fancy name, but they're just kind of something for kids to do, right? If
Yeah.
you're looking to really develop your child, obviously this depends a little bit on what level your child is playing at, okay? Then you get on the internet, you find camps that are in your area or someplace that you can get to, and you just kind of go from there. You have to read, you have to research them, you have to talk to people. Like, so what we did initially, let's say when she was initially looking for better development, but she was still Select. We would go to a camp and it would have all sort of age groups because we were just trying to get her in a situation where she could get more touches and maybe a little bit of elevated coaching, because a lot of these camps, let's say if it's like a pro camp, like a Barca camp or something like that, they have coaches there who have either coached or maybe they have played professionally, semi-pro, something like that, right? Which is more than what we just have inherently in this area. So it's like, okay, well, let's get her to that because that's going to be good for her so she can kind of see new things, maybe learn a few new tricks, right? Once she became a part of her GA team, we started realizing, well, we don't want to find a camp where there's a mix of skill levels.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a little bit of a waste of time, right?
Yeah.
Because there's some kids you're trying to teach how to dribble, and then there are other kids that are higher level.
There's
so what we started
no true benchmark.
Right, exactly. And so one of the things that we did, like one of the first summers after she joined GA that we found, and this was me researching on the internet, is I found a camp that was strictly for GA, ECNL, MLS Next Kids. That's it. You had to belong to one of those organizations, and then you had to apply to the camp.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you could sort of, within that, you could look and you could see, okay, well, this is a foot skills session. I want to do that one. Or this is a striking session. I want to do that. And then you could sort of tailor it from there to what you wanted your player to focus on.
Yeah.
And this camp happened to be in Virginia, though, right? So once again, we have the hearth, and we're like, put it on the hearth. Let's look at the dates that were available. Okay, yep, that'll fit. Let's do the sessions. And when we did that, because the sessions were half a day, and we were like, well, they were like 4 days of half day sessions. We said, well, we're going to be there. We're going to leave her there for 2 weeks. My husband took her, and we got rented a place for an Airbnb or something for 2 weeks. Did the sessions for 2 weeks, because if we're going to Virginia, then we want to make sure you get something out of this camp, especially if you're going to be in a camp with higher level kids out of Virginia, where there's tons of resources and tons of skill and all those kinds of things. The other thing that we did was, because the camps were only half a day, so we may have done sort of one sort of camp session in the morning, we would do another one in the evening. We did that for 2 weeks to make sure she got a good smattering of exposure to lots of different things. So, but the internet is where I found it. And we're like, okay, great. And so from there, I'm like, okay, well, she could use some help in finishing. So let me Google finishing camps. And okay, where are they? Let me look at the reviews. Let me talk to friends. Hey, have you ever, you're from this area, you know anything about this camp? Sometimes, kids that she's come in contact with, guest playing. It's like, hey, what about this camp? Or what do you think about this? And so so that would be a good place to start. Number one, figuring out what it is you're trying to accomplish for your child. That depends on the level of play that they're at right now or where they're trying to get to. If you feel like they're the best in their select club and you're trying to get them exposed to something bigger, then you probably want to find a camp that's a little bit more challenging, that has a good name. Not the best camps, they don't have to be the most expensive camps. There's some expensive camps out there.
Yeah.
And honestly, they're no better than some of the camps that you can find a little bit closer. You just have to have a mind of what you hope to accomplish when what you want your child to learn from that camp.
Well, I think that is great information and a wonderful place for us to end today. We hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also, share this with your community. Someone in your community may not be where you are and can benefit from this information that we're sharing. Dr. Omer loves to give her pathway through this
Unbiased.
and unbiased. And but we want to hear from you guys too. So chime in the comments. Don't be afraid. Give somebody a tip. If something you hear sparks something you want to share, yeah, man, let's help each other grow as a community. And what's your saying as we go out? You know, I always tell you.
Yeah, yeah. Always pushing, always striving, always further.